My name is Seleena,
And my name is John.
and you're listening to BioBuds.
I feel like for today's podcast, we should just jump straight into it.
I agree. I think all of our listeners have heard of passive transport, active transport, and osmosis, but they don't know what they are exactly.
I don't think I even know what that is.
Well, let's start with passive transport. Think of passive transport as that senior that has severe senioritis and is just doing the normal amount of schoolwork to get by.
So lazy?
Not necessarily. Passive transport follows the norm, or concentration gradient, and moves from a high to low concentration of solutes. This process, which is also known as simple diffusion, requires no energy. Passive transport does not require any energy and is just going with the flow.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. But what's diffusion?
In simple terms, it's the ability for molecules to move into an open space. Osmosis is an example of passive transport.
Oh yeah, osmosis is the process in which molecules pass through a semi-permeable membrane and go from a high to low concentration of solutes.
Exactly, and since osmosis is a type of passive transport, it doesn't require any energy either.
But why would our audience care about this? Why is any of this important?
The human body is isotonic, meaning that in order for cells to thrive, ion concentrations must be equal on each side of the cell membrane. If they are not, the cell will not transport its excess ions to even out the concentrations. This will allow water to enter the cell, causing the cell to swell and burst.
To prevent all of that from happening, it is crucial during passive transport, osmosis occurs to enable the water to travel from a high concentration to a low concentration.
We've been talking for a while about going with the flow and following the concentration gradient from high to low. Some of our listeners may be wondering, what if solutes don't want to go with the flow?
That will be called active transport. Active transport differs from passive transport because it relies on energy, or ATP.
So just like how I depend on caffeine to get me through the school day, does active transport depend on energy to function?
Exactly. ATP pushes active transport to go against the concentration gradient. This means that instead of moving from a high to low concentration, active transport goes from a low to high concentration. Say, what are the different types of transport proteins involved in passive transport and active transport?
Depending on the solute, both passive transport and active transport can use either channel or carrier proteins.
How interesting.
Yep, it's important that transport proteins only carry specific molecules though, as they are linked to physiological functions.
For instance, the transport protein GLUT4, which is associated with diabetes, is a glucose transporter that is apparent in fat and skeletal muscle. Insulin then sends signals to the channel so glucose can be taken in from the blood.
Essentially, GLUT4 is an example of simple diffusion, meaning that the concentration of sugar entering the cell must be equivalent to the amount of sugar that is consumed.
For example, in type 2 diabetes, the cells fail to respond to the insulin and the channel protein GLUT4 is not incorporated into their membranes. Such mistakes can create excessively high glucose levels, which may lead to heart disease or stroke.
Alright, thank you for listening in on today's podcast. Our main takeaway on the topic of passive transport, osmosis, and active transport is how crucial it is for cells to be responsive within the environment they are occupied in.
Cells don't live in their own little bubble. The cells must keep a steady environment within themselves, otherwise known as maintaining a homeostasis. That is why the cell membrane is semi-permeable and decides what goes in and out of the cell, all because it is regulating homeostasis. Listen in next time.